Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sandra Cruz Unfiltered. My name is Sandra Cruz, and today I'm going to talk about generational trauma. But before I begin, I would like to ask you to please hit the subscribe button below this video. All right, let's get started. Generational trauma means the trauma from the generations we can still remember, which usually means 3 to 4, maximum 5 generations past. Something that our parents and grandparents can still remember from their time growing up. That's called generational trauma. Generational trauma is not really trauma as we see trauma. It is limiting beliefs, self-sabotaging behavior, conditioned beliefs that our parents, grandparents passed down to us based on their trauma that they have never healed. So it's not trauma per se, but it's the aftermath of their trauma that they pass on to us. That's where most of our limiting beliefs come from. That's where most of our self-doubt comes from, our fear of failure, or we're taught not to, I don't know, not get out of our box, like stay in your lane, get a job and make sure you have enough money and you have a home and you should be happy. I remember when I was talking to my aunt and uncle once about my dream of having my own business and how exciting it is to be my own boss and do my own thing. And my uncle said, "You don't need dreams. You have a husband, you have a son, that's your dream." Well, I strongly disagreed, but that was how he grew up. Men go to work, women take care of the house. So, but this belief he tried to push on me, and that really made me upset because I felt completely unvalued, as if my talents were supposed to be taking care of the home and my family. But that was never enough for me, which means I already started at a young age to get out of this box that, yeah, family, friends, generations put me in. Like, get a 9 to 5 job, make a decent amount of money, live your life within that lane. Yeah, the problem was I never liked being told what to do. To this day, I don't like that. But a lot of us are like that because we're starting to change. Every generation is trying to do it better than the generation before. And so, where our parents tried to do better with us than our grandparents did with them, we are now trying to make our life better for ourselves and our children. It's a progress in the right direction. So we're moving out of the generational and ancestral trauma and into empowerment. But it's a slow process because there's so many things we have to first understand we are actually doing before we can stop ourselves passing them on to our children. Here's, for example, some limiting beliefs would be self-pride stinks. I grew up with that. I was not allowed to be proud of myself. That's a very bad thing. So for them, being proud of yourself is the same as like being full of yourself. Like, oh my God, look at me, look what I can do. But it's not the same thing. Being proud of your accomplishments is a good thing. You're meant to be proud of your accomplishments. But the generations before me didn't believe that. But then again, I grew up in Germany. I was born in Germany. And my grandparents and parents were post-war. So, of course, their mindset was built upon the war and what their parents and grandparents went through and believed because of that. And so their mindset was completely sheltered, boxed in, like, don't be seen, don't be heard, just do your work and live your life and, yeah, don't act out. Well, I like the term. Yeah. So another limiting belief would be you make your bed and you lay in it. Now that's an interesting one because we were taught that it's a bad thing, you did this, you deal with it. Okay, but these are just words, just like surrender. Now, I work on surrender with my clients a lot because surrender is just a word. You can choose to surrender into a negative way. You can choose to surrender into a positive way. So I'm trying to shift that with my clients. There's so many things we were taught that could go either way. I'm just being realistic. Now, whenever your parents tell you, well, I'm just being realistic, means they're expecting you to fail. All right. But the chances of losing or winning is 50-50. So saying I'm just being realistic can just as well mean the opposite. I'm just being realistic in saying that I'm going to be a best-selling author one day because that is a possibility if I work towards it, right? Or, for example, my mother is one of my greatest supporters. She loves to see how my business is growing. But at first, she was giving me something positive, only to be followed by something negative, as if she had to excuse herself for saying something positive. Now, that's a tricky mindset. And I had to call her out a couple of times on that. But that's what she grew up with. Don't think too positive because that never works out anyways. Think negative and just be happy when something positive comes from it. Yeah, when you're trying to manifest things into your life, this is really not the best approach. So you see, generational trauma is not trauma by itself, but it's the trauma that our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents went through and how that shaped their lives and their beliefs. And so they passed this on to us. Now it is our job to release all that. For the longest time, I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to be seen. I was afraid to be heard. I was afraid to voice my opinion. I was afraid to go on video and talk about all this. But I had to challenge myself because I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to share my wisdom on trauma. I wanted to share what I've learned on my healing journey so that I can help you with that. But I had to overcome my limiting beliefs. It was so difficult for me to kick that belief that I wasn't allowed to be proud of myself. In the beginning, when I said I was proud of myself, I felt guilty for saying that. Now, see what the limiting belief of your parents and grandparents can do to you. They can guilt trip you. They can make you feel a horrible person simply because of this limiting belief. And that's really just what it is, a limiting belief, because each and every one of you is limitless. You are a limitless being. There is no limit to what you can achieve when you set your mind to it and work towards it. You can achieve anything you want. The only thing that limits you is your belief system. So if you can kick all those limiting beliefs, those self-sabotaging behavior, all those conditioned beliefs to the curb, you're free to do whatever you want. You're free to rise to heights you never thought possible. You're free to achieve things you only ever dreamed of. And this is so powerful. And what's even more, you release the limiting beliefs that your parents and grandparents ingrained within you. You will never pass those on to your children. Your children will grow up empowered because you automatically empower them. They watch you empower yourself. That's how you break the generational trauma. You always push through those limiting beliefs. Now, how do we know that we're dealing with limiting beliefs? For me, it's always like a weird stomach feeling. Like I think of doing something where I hit a glass ceiling, to the next level. And there's always a limiting belief or two or three or four I still need to work through. So whenever you level up, you release those limiting beliefs to that level that works for your level of being at this time. Then as you work through it and you have the next goals. And with the next goals, they're higher, of course. And so to get there, you hit another glass ceiling where you have to, grind away those limiting beliefs a little more so that you can get to the next level. For me, that was feeling comfortable in video. That was one of my biggest limiting beliefs, being seen, being heard, fear of rejection. Those are usually my three that I always have to work through again and again whenever I hit the new glass ceiling. So next time, I'm going to have my dream come true of being on a stage of a TEDx and give a talk about my story, about bringing hope to people and showing them that trauma healing is really possible. You can do this. I will have to scrape away on those limiting beliefs again. But you know what? At some point, it becomes exciting because you realize that you grew and you're ready to grow again. You're ready to kick something else to the curb that no longer serves you. And that is spectacular. The beautiful thing is you only have to release those limiting beliefs time and time again, and you automatically change. There is nothing you have to do to become more outspoken, to become more sure of yourself, to have more confidence. This happens automatically as you release those limiting beliefs. And that's so amazing. Now, I do hope that you enjoyed my video, that it gave you something to think about and to look at what you were brought up with believing and how that actually resonates with you. And then I encourage you to just kick those beliefs to the curb and push through, challenge yourself. You're afraid of doing something, do it anyways. That's how you grow. That's how you release those limiting beliefs. In case you're wondering how on earth you're going to start working through your limiting beliefs, your self-sabotaging behavior, and your conditioned behavior, and how to get your life turned around away from the beliefs you were brought up with and creating your own. Well, I'm happy to let you know that I have created a coaching program that will help you to do just that. We will have one-on-one sessions in which we will determine which limiting beliefs you have, and I will give you action steps and help you to push through them, challenge yourself, release those limiting beliefs, and create a life you can't wait to start living. So if you'd like to know more about that, please look below the video. There is the link to my website in the description. Check it out. I'm also leaving my email address in case you have any questions or if there's a subject you would like me to cover. Then please just reach out. I'm looking forward to your message. And of course, I also leave the link to my book in case you're interested in reading it. I do hope that this video was of value to you. Please share, like, and subscribe to my channel. And always remember, trauma is not a life sentence. You have the power to heal. Bye.